We need to protect the border. We need to reduce inflation.
Making sure that the election is free and fair and that Kamala Harris wins.
Climate change, and I think affordable housing for all is important to me.
In June this year, President Joe Biden and Donald Trump squared off in the first debate of the 2024 United States presidential race. The US president stammered and fumbled several times, while Republican candidate Donald Trump was forceful and aggressive during the entire debate. A disappointing performance by Biden left Democrats considering if someone younger should replace the incumbent. This run-up to the election's debate brought back cues about the first ever televised presidential debate. The year was 1960. The first televised debate was broadcast live between two presidential candidates, John F. Kennedy, popularly called JFK, and Richard Nixon. Vice President Richard Nixon's fatigued appearance that night in the month of September opened a pathway to the White House for the much more confident John F. Kennedy. These presidential candidates' debates have changed the way people perceive their physical fitness and mental strength for running office. In 1960, on the television debate stage, Kennedy appeared calm and friendly, while Nixon appeared edgy. People who watched the debate thought Kennedy won, while people who listened to it on the radio thought Nixon won. The debate made the appearance, voice, body language, and how one connected to the audience extremely important. It was John F. Kennedy who went on to win the 1960 election.
And I can assure you that every degree of mind and spirit that I possess will be devoted to the long-range interests of the United States.
After Nixon lost the election to Kennedy by the smallest margin of any presidential race in American history, no one really thought Republican Richard Nixon would run for office again. It looked like Nixon was out of politics for good. But in 1968, Richard Nixon surprised everyone by winning the presidency in a hard-fought campaign. The presidential campaign in 1968 occurred during one of the most tumultuous times in American history. The Vietnam War and the resulting protests, along with the political assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy, contributed to these difficult times. At the beginning of the election season, President Lyndon Johnson, who was the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination and a sitting president, should have won his party's nomination without any trouble. But growing opposition to the war in Vietnam, unrest on college campuses, and urban rioting made him vulnerable, and it pushed him to announce his withdrawal from the race for the presidency. As a result, the Democratic Party nomination opened up for two candidates, Senator Robert Kennedy of New York and Senator Eugene McCarthy of Minnesota. After the assassination of Robert Kennedy following his primary victory in California, Hubert Humphrey became the choice of the Democrats. Kennedy's assassination strengthened Humphrey's bid for the Democratic nomination, and by late August, Humphrey controlled the majority of delegates to the Democratic convention. On the Republican side, Richard Nixon focused on issues such as law and order and won every primary he entered. He easily won the Republican nomination during a quiet convention in Miami, Florida. George Wallace, the former governor of Alabama, ran for president as an independent. Amid all these trials and tribulations, Nixon, a reversal of the 1960 election results, won a close election over Humphrey in the Electoral College, 301 to 191. Wallace finished third with 46 Electoral College votes. Richard Nixon became the 37th President of the United States, serving from 1969 until his resignation in 1974. Cut to the 2024 presidential election. This election has been anything but predictable. From the unexpected assassination attempts on Republican candidate Donald Trump to Joe Biden's withdrawal from the presidential race, which paved the way for Kamala Harris to step up as the new Democratic nominee. The race to the White House has only intensified. The U.S. presidential elections 2024 are scheduled for the 5th of November. The opinion polls reflect how Republican candidate Donald Trump and Democratic candidate Kamala Harris are contesting neck to neck. But their campaigns are also focused on the electorally important swing states. As their name implies, swing states can potentially sway the outcome of a national election. So what is a swing state, and what role do they play in presidential races? Let's first understand why states matter in U.S. elections. Though American voters vote for their preferred presidential candidate on election day, their votes do not directly elect the president. The votes matter for a body known as the Electoral College, comprising electors, that is, party leaders and loyalists, activists, etc. Each state is assigned a number of electors equivalent to its representation in the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives. Electors in each state cast their vote to directly elect the president. A candidate is required to win 270 out of the total 538 Electoral College votes to win the presidential elections.
The Electoral College is the system that our founders devised to help select the President of the United States. The way that it works is rather than having a national popular vote, each state has a given set of electors, and the majority of the candidate who gets the majority in that state will then have those electors meet in what we call a college to actually formally cast a vote for president. And so it was designed as a safeguard against sort of the wild public opinion. People shouldn't be trusted, and instead was designed to limit things from state to state to prevent any kind of contagion, but then also create a buffer of these electors to interpret the public's opinion, but not necessarily be bound to it.
A swing state, also known as a battleground state or purple state, is a state where both major political parties, the Democrats and Republicans, have a strong chance of winning. Unlike red or blue states, which consistently vote for one party, swing states can swing either way. In swing states, the vote is often very close, and a small shift in voter preference can determine who wins that state, and potentially the entire election. Most states have a winner-takes-all system, meaning the candidate with the most votes in a state wins all that state's electoral votes. In swing states, where the race is close, these electoral votes can make all the difference in reaching the magic number 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. For example, in the 2020 election, the margin of victory in Arizona was only 0.3%, yet all of the state's 11 electoral votes went to the Democrats. One of the defining characteristics of a swing state is its political leanings. But states that were once tagged as undecided can start to tilt towards one party or another. For this reason, swing states can change. Florida, for example, was considered a swing state from the 1990s through 2020, but it is now seen as reliably red as Republican voter registration grows. This year, the states being closely watched are Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Minnesota. New to this clutch of swing states is North Carolina. But the 2024 presidential election might also be decided by the undecided. Yes, you heard that right, in an era of hyperpolarization. The idea that there are still undecided voters might seem unbelievable. But they do exist, and they could choose who wins in the US elections. Many of these Americans aren't so much divided between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Instead, they're undecided on whether or not to vote. Others have complex calculations to make about how the candidates align with their values. Undecideds are often seen as voters who sit squarely in the middle of today's polarized politics. In reality, their views are all over the place. They are important because presidential elections now come down to a small number of voters in swing states. As the 2024 US presidential election ramps up, investment in political advertising has skyrocketed. Analysts have predicted the figure could climb as high as $12 billion before Election Day, up nearly 30% from the last presidential election in 2020. With the rise of artificial intelligence, or AI, the influence of social media platforms, and the expansive reach of the internet, political parties are leveraging digital tools to engage voters, shape narratives, and even manipulate perceptions. Social media platforms have emerged as powerful tools for political communication, enabling parties to directly engage with voters, disseminate their messages, and mobilize support. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp have become indispensable components of political campaigns, allowing candidates to reach millions of voters. One of the most significant applications of AI in the 2024 election is the use of predictive analytics to target swing voters. By analyzing demographic, socioeconomic, and behavioral data, AI algorithms can identify individuals who are undecided or susceptible to persuasion. Political parties can tailor their messaging and outreach efforts to appeal to these pivotal voter segments, potentially swaying the outcome of the election. However, the proliferation of AI in political campaigning raises ethical concerns regarding data privacy, algorithmic bias, and manipulation of public opinion. The use of AI-powered deep fake technology, for instance, poses a threat to the integrity of the electoral process. Sometimes fabricated videos or audio recordings are designed to deceive voters. With the race for the US presidential elections heating up, politically motivated deepfakes have taken over the internet. Reportedly, few US politicians, including Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, are using deepfakes to deceive people, influencing public opinion, and spread misinformation. A few months ago, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump posted a set of images alongside the caption which read, "I accept." These images showed American singer Taylor Swift and her fans supporting Trump. The post sparked a backlash among Swift fans. Many of these images were created using artificial intelligence. fans accused Trump of spreading misinformation. And that's not all. Elon Musk, an ardent Trump supporter, was also criticized for sharing a deep-fake video of Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris. The video, viewed by millions, carried no indication that it was a parody. Only post-criticism did Musk clarify that the video was meant as satire. Faked images of Trump made using AI tools showed the former president being arrested, and AI-generated images of Biden in a military uniform have cropped up, too. Combating misinformation requires a multi-pronged approach involving technological solutions and regulatory measures. AI-driven fact-checking tools can help identify and flag false information, while educational campaigns can empower citizens to critically evaluate online content.
As with past US elections, the economy remains a big factor in 2024 too. Vice President Kamala Harris promises an opportunity economy focused on targeted tax cuts, healthcare reform, and green energy. Former President Donald Trump is pushing for tax reductions, especially for American-made products, and a tariff-heavy trade policy. We focus on economic plans for the candidates to understand who Americans trust more with their financial prospects. Trump and Harris have laid out an array of ideas, each claiming their measure would strengthen the economy and improve people's lives. The vice president has promised to end federal income taxes on tips to woo hospitality and service workers in key battleground states like Nevada. Tips would remain subject to payroll taxes under Harris's plan. Her campaign said she would work with Congress on a proposal that would set income limits and include measures to prevent fraud. On the other hand, Trump has rolled out a series of targeted tax breaks, including eliminating federal taxes on tips, Social Security, benefits, and overtime pay. Trump was the first candidate to promise an end to taxes on tips, floating it at a rally in Las Vegas about 2 months earlier than Harris.
We have a special tax that here is going to do, I think, quite well. It's called No Tax on Tips.
The vice president has promised to provide tax relief to 100 million Americans, particularly the middle class. Her plan centers on reviving or extending several temporary measures that Biden and congressional Democrats enacted. Harris's proposal would restore the American Rescue Plan's popular expansion of the child tax credit to as much as $3,600, up from $2,000 per child, and call for it to be made permanent. The enhancement was only in effect in 2021. Trump unveiled measures aimed at helping Americans. Trump said he would temporarily cap credit card interest rates at around 10%, which is less than half the current rate. He also promised to make the interest paid on car loans fully tax-deductible, similar to the popular existing deduction for mortgage interest. This, he said, would help senior citizens and their family members. Trump has said he would push for tax credit for family caregivers. Harris hasn't specified whether she would add any new tariffs if elected, but the Biden-Harris administration has kept most of the tariffs Trump imposed when he was in office.
Looks like by April.
Trump has said that if elected again, he will impose an across-the-board tariff of either 10 or 20% on every import coming into the US, as well as a tariff upward of 60% on all Chinese imports. Trump claims that tariffs will boost American manufacturing, create jobs, and bring in billions of dollars to help pay for other policy initiatives. Harris has criticized Trump's new plan for across-the-board tariffs, which many studies show would result in higher inflation. The vice president has a three-part plan aimed at addressing the nation's housing shortage, parts of which build on proposals that Biden has already unveiled. Among the key provisions are providing up to $25,000 in down payment support and a $10,000 tax credit for first-time homebuyers. The plan would allow for more than 1 million first-time buyers per year, including first-generation homebuyers, to access the funds. Trump has not rolled out a formal housing proposal, but has talked on the campaign trail about ways he'd help homeowners. Trump has promised to make housing more affordable and boost supply by deregulating some laws. As Kamala Harris and Donald Trump enter the final lap of the race to the White House, Europe and West Asia seem to be fidgety about the potential impact of the US presidential election on the wars in the continent and global security. In the run-up, the Biden administration is still not giving up hope for short-term deals for ceasefires between Israel and Hamas in Gaza and Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. But political uncertainty in the United States has made the sides reluctant to commit to any significant agreements before it is clear who has won the White House. West Asia continues on the brink after Israelis struck Iranian military targets in a retaliation for Iran's barrage of ballistic missile attacks on the 1st of October. The Biden administration was able to persuade Israel to keep its response limited, gaining assurances that it would not hit nuclear or oil sites in Iran that would have escalated the conflict. The US continues to press for any movement on a ceasefire, despite letdowns in the past. When it comes to the war in Ukraine and the security of Europe, many European officials say they are worried about a win for Republican former President Trump, given turbulent transatlantic relations in his previous term. In his past criticism of NATO and his ambivalent view of Kyiv's fight against Russia's invasion, Trump has often boasted that if he wins, he could end the war in a day. On the other hand, Kamala Harris, the Democratic candidate, is widely expected to continue support for Ukraine while seeking to avoid escalation if she wins the election. Harris has said she will work to ensure Kyiv prevails in the war, although she has not set out a detailed Ukraine strategy. The devastating wars in Ukraine and Gaza have raised serious focus on Washington's role ahead. America matters because of its economic and military strength, as well as its role in many global alliances. Who will take charge of the juggernaut here on? Will Kamala Harris take forward Biden's legacy? Or will it be Donald Trump leading the way? Whatever the outcome, it will shape our collective future.